was, and for a big record hop event. I said, oh, okay, we're doing the, the Art Association again? No, it's going to be a little bit bigger this time. All right, where is it? He goes, we're going to do Essex. Well, they turned out that they closed off a section of 133 in Essex to the public on a Saturday night, and they advertised it like crazy. We must have had 300 or 400 people there. The highlight was he had to play. Everybody loved to hear him play. So anyway, thank you.
Stop. Oops. Any other stories?
Lee, I got a couple things.
Yeah, come up and tell stories. Christy, would you? Yeah. Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Peter Tibbetts, and I am honored and privileged to own the house that Sylvester was born in and brought up in right across the street here. And in 1917, he planted a catalpa tree in the yard. And in the last few years of his life, he would meander down in the middle of the summer. He had his big straw hat and a walking cane. He'd come up and knock on my front door, and we'd just sit on the front steps and reminisce about, well, he'd reminisce about the old times. The cow barn which you're sitting in, and how his mom and dad bought the place in, I think, 1898, and started the Ahola dairy farm. But I felt as though I shared some very precious moments with Sylvester. I didn't know him that well as far as the music and that kind of stuff, but it was fun for him to come over and talk about his old house and that kind of stuff. And after a few years of living in the house, I kept hearing this music. And it was like if somebody next door had the radio turned up loud, or a car was sparked with a radio, well, you know what I'm talking about. You can go outside, and you couldn't hear it. So I go back in the house, and it was still there. You barely tell what it was. And I says, it's got to be Sylvester's ghost or something. So I finally said to my wife at the time, I says, Claudia, you're not going to believe this, but I hear this music go. She says, oh my God, I hear the same thing I did when I was singing. I think I was crazy. So anyway, this went on for a couple of years, and I hate to burst the bubble. But I was listening to something, and I heard this in the background, the same music, and all of a sudden we had a forced hot air system. It stopped, and the music stopped. It just happened to be a little teeny illy in one of the pipes. And the air was on, it blew through it, and made this sort of a musical thing. I was still glad to say this. Yeah, what a guy. But that's my social answer.
Christy knew them very well.
Yes, I was taking care of him in the end.
Yes.
You can read my story there.
Christy wrote a story for a Finnish American reporter. Who else would like to talk about their experiences with Sylvester?
I think you could have some.
Yes?
I think
I'm just saying from here.
Come over here, because I think you can sing in here. Stand up here. You can have a microphone if you like.
No, that's all right. I really don't have that much to say, except I'm still kicking myself because when I was younger, my folks and Simon and Sylvester were good friends. And he offered to teach me the trumpet, and I didn't take him up on it. But yeah, he had the radio set, One Perch on Friday, was a common name for it. We won't go into the others. And but another time I was over there, I like snakes, so I remarked to him one time how many snakes were around there. So after that, he always called his house Garter Snake Heaven. But he was over at our house in Rockport one time on New Year's Eve and went out at midnight and blew this wonderful solo for about 5 minutes. And all the neighbors from nowhere, you couldn't see anybody. All of a sudden you could hear this clapping and applause and so forth in the background. So he was a good friend, wonderful sense of humor. And I just wish I'd taken more of an opportunity to learn that trumpet, because as you say, he had the best sound of anybody I ever heard. So, I thank him and thank you.
Thank you. Do you all remember when you used to sit in the doorway of the Congregational Church? Was it Barnacle Bazaar?
Yes.
And play? Be a record going behind him, and he would improvise. Fascinating, wonderful stuff. Anyone else like to speak? Yes.
This isn't really a story. My name is Betty Urkala, but Sylvester Ahola.
You don't have a big voice.
Sylvester Ahola played at John's and my wedding reception in Rockport as recently as 1970. So he played his trumpet, and Miriam Lane played her accordion. They played Finnish and American numbers both, so that's really a very nice memory that we have of him. And then I do remember going to the record hops that Leo was the DJ at, and Sylvester, he did a great job with When the Saints Come Marching In. That was just, that was a lot of fun. So that's how I remember him.
That was what he played to all the time, was the Dukes of Dixieland. He loved the Dukes of Dixieland. And I still have one of his albums because it got mixed up with some of my records, and so all those songs that he used to play at the record hop, I still have that album. But yeah, he played right along.
Well, I guess we could go back and drink coffee and listen.
Hey, Lee.
And watch the whole movie.
Hey, Lee, mention the columns here that are missing. That hope everybody notices the columns are gone.
I was here when we were shoveling out the cow stalls. And there were rows of windows on both sides. And the cows faced outward, which meant we could clean the gutters. So we cleaned the gutters. Once it was bought the barn, what was it, 55?
This has been here a long time. We did record hops here. And this
Yeah, do you remember the pie social?
what?
Pie social?
And this one.
Anyway, thank you all for coming. And don't miss the home movies back there. And the pictures are wonderful.
What was his best recording of all, though?
But the best thing that I ever did on records, so I think it was not jazz. The best thing I feel that I ever did was the cornet, labeled as a cornet solo on xylophone. Somewhere a voice is calling, and until, which is on the other side. That may surprise you and many other people, but to sing out a simple ballad with any conception of what the message is supposed to convey is the thing on a trumpet. I played that on a trumpet. That is the recording I made at Kingsway Hall. And it was very cold there that morning. I wasn't used to unheated theaters and such as the English musicians didn't seem to mind. But I was cold. I wore an overcoat and I had kid gloves on. Well, it was so cold there that I was complaining. I said, geez. So they brought a little heater and they plugged it into the footlights. The other footlights weren't on. They turned them all off, but they plugged in this heater, which didn't mean anything. Just for me. So On the master, I had a hat on too, a felt hat. The other fellows were sitting without overcoats, of course. Me up front there with just a powder puff with an overcoat and a hat and gloves on. So for the master, I took off the right-hand glove. That's all. That's the story on Somewhere a Voice is Calling, and I do consider it the best thing I ever did.
Somewhere a Voice is Calling, cornet solo by Sylvester Ahola. Actually a trumpet, but someone in the publicity department thought that a cornet would be recognized throughout the British Empire where the record would be sold, whereas a trumpet would not. Can you beat it?